the National Catholic Register. This is Register Radio, bringing light and clarity to the news and topics that affect your life.
Can Christianity and feminism coexist? It's a question many scholars, theologians, and Catholics have been asking for decades. One expert weighs in. This week on Register Radio, we talk to author and Register contributor Carrie Gress about feminism and Christianity. And then, in the midst of debates and concerns about the future of AI and whether it can be used to serve the faith, we look at an authentically Catholic response. Hello, I'm Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News and host of Register Radio, joined as always by my co-host Shannon Mullen, Editor-in-Chief of the National Catholic Register. How are you, Shannon?
Very well, Matthew.
Hoping you survived and you're doing all right with the cold.
We eventually got dug out, yes. Very good.
Well, our guest this week recently wrote, "There remains a general belief that feminism is simply malleable enough to fit in with even the most ardent adherents of the Christian faith. This belief, however, is proving to be incredibly misleading to millions of faithful, unsuspecting Christians. Is feminism compatible with the Christian faith? It is a vital question, and here to talk about that is the author, Carrie Gress, who's a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, a scholar at the Institute for Human Ecology at the Catholic University of America, and a contributor, happily, to the National Catholic Register. Carrie, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, let's start with this question. Why does it matter whether feminism is compatible with Christianity? Because I actually get asked that from time to time.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we don't want to try to be putting together things that are almost diametrically opposed to each other. So this is, it's sort of like asking, why does it matter if communism is, compatible with Christianity? Like these are very deeply rooted ideologies, and feminism is just another one. It actually grew up with socialism and communism, and I think it's a really important issue because we obviously don't want to be, infecting or smuggling something into Catholicism that's actually incompatible with it.
Carrie, Something Wicked, your new book, is part of a long-running debate that's been pretty heated at times, and I think in at the start of any debate, there's the importance of defining terms. But what do you think most women, or maybe most women think feminism is?
Yeah. No, I think this is a great point to start with, talking about your terms. I think one of the problems with feminism is that most women in the United States and in the West just think that feminism is something that is specifically to help women. It's a very vague term. It can kind of be applied loosely to things, but as long as it's somehow helping women, then it can sort of be classified as feminist. So that was one of the things that I feel like I just went back and looked at all of the history of feminism and the actual movement itself, and asking that question: is this really helping women? And when you really get into the deep roots of it, it comes up very quickly and very clearly that it's actually much more ideologically driven than that. Helping women is a really nice veneer, but that actually isn't at all what feminism has been about. It's really been about getting rid of Christianity. The early first wave feminists actually believed that Christianity was a tool used by men to enslave women. And so it was trying to get rid of that. You also have a whole array of women who were deeply involved in Unitarianism. So they didn't actually believe in the divinity of Christ. So if that's your starting point, and then you kind of see these ideas track along that path of either anti-Christian or really compatible with socialism and communism, then you've got a problem, because we know these things are deeply focused on not just getting rid of our faith, but also getting rid of the family. And I think that's really where the problems start to arise, is when you're dabbling in things that are actually deeply damaging to not just our faith, but the cornerstone of civilization, which is the family.
Yeah, you've written extensively on this. You've written a previous book or more on this. Why was it important to say more? What were you feeling the need to say with this particular book?
Yeah. So my first book was called The Anti-Mary Exposed. That came out about 9 years ago. And then a couple of years ago, I wrote the book called The End of Woman, which was a much more secular look at really how feminism started and how it's led us to the trans movement, that it really was this gradual ideology. But what I didn't do in that book was really look at the question of feminism as it relates to Christianity, and finally really drive it home that these two are just totally incompatible, different groups of thought with very different DNA. So that's why I felt like this needed to be done, because you can see a lot of efforts, people that have the best of intentions, but they just don't understand what it is that they're dealing with. And so it's really misleading a lot of people, both among Protestants, but certainly among Catholics as well. And so I just felt like I needed to kind of unravel that and even make very clear distinctions between what John Paul II was doing with his work on women, and his very, very limited use of the word feminism. We only have evidence of him using it 3 times in a 26-year pontificate, but he was very clearly mapping out something for women and for us to understand women that actually kind of flies in the face of what it was that early first wave feminists were doing, and then obviously only gets worse with the subsequent second, third, and fourth waves. So that's what I think really I felt like I had left unsaid, was these two things just cannot be brought together in a way that's going to be harmonious to the Catholic faith.
Well, you mentioned people with the best of intentions or good intentions. We all know what that paves. But at the same time, what is the response then from a Catholic such as yourself to the question, well, wait a minute, are you saying then that all the advances of women don't matter? That isn't that what feminism has given us?
Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic point. I mean, one of the things you have to look at is really what were the intentions of the early feminists. And Mary Wollstonecraft is one who felt very moved by trying to help a sister, a best friend, the women in her life who she felt like had really difficult and challenging lives. And so she was trying to correct that. Now, obviously, there are tweaks that can be made to laws and different ways in which women are treated. But what fundamentally came out of Wollstonecraft's intentions, and we see all through the first wave of feminism, was this changing of womanhood at its heart, and to try to make women look more like men, to sort of fit us into this masculine model at the denigration of motherhood and whatnot. So the problem remains, actually. If you look at feminism, I know I ran across a woman in 1909 who was an author and said, everything that Mary Wollstonecraft wanted to protect women actually hasn't come to pass. And I think, another 100 years later, we can look at that and say, are women better protected? Are they less subject to violence and abuse? And I think the answer is no. If you look at what's happened with, certainly with abortion, also with human trafficking, I think we've tried to sort of bubble wrap women against these vulnerabilities, but in fact, we've actually created bigger and worse problems because of it. We're not required to. I think it's just important to frame feminism within its right context, because people like to gloss over it and say, oh, it's just been about education and jobs for women. But if you, again, look much deeper, there's a lot more that's going on there that's really tried to subvert the culture. And I think the bigger point as Catholics too, really, is our understanding of what motherhood is. What does it mean to understand the Blessed Virgin Mary? What does it mean to understand the ecclesiology of the Church as Holy Mother Church and the Bride of Christ? All of these things become very distorted when we try and twist what womanhood is on a natural level. It has some much deeper and significant effects and ramifications on an intellectual and supernatural level too.
Carrie, I really want to ask you about the title of the book. Also, the photo or the image that's on there is significant to you. Can you briefly explain how that came about?
Sure. Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. So something wicked came to me. I was just puttering around my house, and I've been thinking about what do I call the book, and I didn't want it to be something with the word woman in it again, but I wanted it to somehow be a shorthand so that people knew instantaneously sort of what the book was about. And it's sometimes hard to do that. So at one point the term "something wicked this way comes" jumped to mind, and I was like, wait a minute, that's the answer, something wicked, because I think it captures so much, and people know the Shakespearean quote that there's something easily memorable about it. So that came together amazingly, and then the book cover. Was I actually have a whole story in Something Wicked about this painter who was named Robert Duncanson. He was from the Hudson River School of Painting, and really talented, but it's only recently been figured out that his paintings, he was a black man and he painted all these paintings in the South, and it's only been discovered that they were actually clues to help Black people get out of the South before the Civil War happened. So it's just been a fascinating study, and I ended up using one of Duncanson's paintings for the cover of the book. And so it's not till you get to the very end that you actually realize the symbolism in the painting that you're looking at, that you've been holding in your hands as you've read through the book. But it was really, really special because I didn't know what I wanted to use for the cover. I knew I wanted something peaceful because the last couple of books that I have published have been a little bit more aggressive. And I thought, I think we're at the point where what we really need women to understand is there's an avenue forward that's peaceful and hopeful and faith-filled. And I felt like all of that came through in that image from Duncanson for the cover. So yeah, the Holy Spirit was really all over this project. It was just incredible when as these things came together, and just the realization that image could be used for the cover was just amazing too.
So congratulations, you're able to integrate Macbeth, Shakespeare, with this magnificent painting of liberation, and in some ways you're also recapturing the rainbow.
Yes, that was part of it too. So yeah, I've been hearing from people who've been reading it like on airplanes. It looks very provocative, and it's not at all what people think that it looks like. It looks very liberal, and then when you get into it, you realize there's so much more depth to it. So and I think that's really part of a good book, a good storytelling, trying to help people contextualize this instead of just a lot of facts and dates. I wanted it to become something that you could, really personally dig your teeth into and take into your life.
Yeah, one last quick question, and that is, are you optimistic about the future in terms of where society's going on the question of feminism, on gender ideology, transgender ideology?
Yeah. I am, partially because I've been at this for 10 years now, and I've never seen so many people interested in the topic the way that it is now. I think people have seen this tipping point of womanhood and just realized something is deeply, deeply wrong here, and we've got to change course. And so I think that people are finally realizing, like, maybe there's one common denominator here. Maybe it really is feminism, and open to the question of, just the way it's affected us, the way it's fueling abortion, all of these things. I think people are listening in a way that they haven't been before. So I think there's incredible hope there. Yeah.
Where can people find the book?
The best place to find it, obviously you can get it, the publisher has it, sophiainstitute.com. If people want signed copies, they can get it at my website, theologyofhome.com. And it's certainly available at Amazon and other places great books are sold.
Wow. Thank you as always, Carrie. Great to have you on.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, you're listening to Register Radio here on EWTN Radio. Next, we talk about a Catholic response to AI. Stay tuned to Register Radio.
Let's return to Register Radio on EWTN.
And welcome back. I'm Matthew Bunson here, as always, with Shannon Mullen, Editor-in-Chief of the National Catholic Register. Well, Shannon, one of the major topics that we're hearing everywhere, but also in the church, is the question of AI.
Yeah, it's last year was the big AI year, I think, a real turning point, and people starting to grapple with some of the implications of the technology. And that's just going to continue this year. Meanwhile, we're all starting to use AI tools more frequently. It's becoming much more mainstream now.
Yeah, one of the questions is what are the threats, the opportunities, the implications? And I know somebody who on our staff has been ardently looking at this and doing some really great reporting is Jonah McKeown, who is one of our great staff writers. Jonah, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's always great to be here.
Well, I think we've talked to you a couple of times just in the last year or so about some of the articles you've been doing on AI, and I want to invite all of our listeners to go to ncregister.com to read your previous reporting. And I know you have a couple of pieces out. I know we want to talk also about Father Robert Spitzer's new Magis AI. And let's set the table a little bit, though, here with where are we in terms of like the Catholic response to AI from your reporting?
Right. So AI is such an interesting field to report on and just to keep an eye out for as Catholics, because everything's changing all the time. AI producers are always producing new products and new ways of using AI and kind of pushing it into our lives. But there's definitely been talk that Pope Leo is possibly going to write an apostolic letter on AI, which would be very welcome. But there's a great note from the Vatican that came out last year, I think at the end of 2024, called Antigua et Nova, that I definitely recommend that people take a look at, that really emphasizes the importance of, keeping hold of our humanity, our God-given dignity in the face of AI, because AI is only going to become more capable and more able to kind of take tasks away from us and take away our brain power in a way. And so in the face of that, it's so important. The Vatican says and instructs us to hold on to everything that is truly human. So there's definitely a lot of developments happening in the AI world, but Pope Leo really does seem to be on top of it, and it's not confirmed whether he's going to be writing an entire letter on AI, but he certainly talks about it frequently in his speeches and his addresses.
Yeah, Jonah, one of the pieces you wrote for us, as Matthew alluded to, was about our own Father Robert Spitzer's AI initiative, Magis AI. Tell us about what that is.
Yeah, it's a great project from Father Robert Spitzer, who I'm sure many EWTN viewers have watched for many years. He has a TV show on EWTN and has written many books about basically the harmony of faith and science. That, the fact that the Catholic Church has been very involved in kind of the development of modern science, and that in contrast to what many people might think, there actually is no contrast or no conflict, I should say, between faith and science. And so basically what the Magis Center, which is the educational group that Father Spitzer founded, has done is they've kind of distilled all of Father Spitzer's knowledge into an AI app. They've kind of uploaded his brain to the cloud, if you will.
That's a big brain to upload.
Yes, no, it probably took a long time, but and so I spoke to Father Spitzer, and he actually just kind of described it that way. He said, this app is a way for people to basically have him sitting next to them and have Father Spitzer answer their questions for them if they want to. And so, users can go, it looks very similar to other AIs like, ChatGPT and that kind of thing. You can just ask a simple question and it will think for a second and give you kind of a well-reasoned, well thought out answer. And it's a very apologetics focused app. So he told me it's very geared towards, young people, parents, teachers who might have encountered difficult questions or difficulties defending certain aspects of their faith. And this app aims to give them, a very well thought out answer. And again, it's kind of powered, if you will, by the 20 books that Father Spitzer has written, and I'm sure many other sources as well. So that's kind of the purpose of Magis AI, which is available from all kinds of app stores.
So what are some of the other options out there in terms of AI that a Catholic might be interested in?
Right, there are actually several. So another one that people may have heard of is Magisterium AI, which is created by the Catholic company Longbeard. And this is actually a very, very ambitious project because they're trying to basically digitize every piece of Catholic knowledge ever written. So every document that the Vatican has ever produced, even if they're not digitized right now, they actually have a team of robotic digitizers in the Vatican scanning 1,000-year-old books and manuscripts to try to get every single piece of knowledge that they possibly can and kind of distill that into one app. So then basically it's a searchable database that you can kind of converse with and talk to. And basically their goal is to make sure that for any internet user on Earth, they can access, the rich base of knowledge that we have as Catholics. So that's a really interesting project, and that's the Magisterium AI app, and that's also, I believe, available within the Hallow app. And there are some others too. There are some other really interesting Catholic AI apps. Like there's one called Kata GPT, which is based on the French word for catechism, and that is kind of like a searchable database of the catechism. So there's definitely some really interesting AI projects going on that are very focused on Catholicism and serving Catholics.
Yeah, and the technology is pretty amazing, right? But the originators, the creators of these tools, Catholics really need to pay attention to where these things are coming from, that they're credible sources. People obviously trust Father Spitzer implicitly, but it's the same with ChatGPT and these other tools. They're very powerful, and we tend to take their word for it, really, without checking the sources. So. Jonah, I think when we get into matters of faith and moral questions, aren't the stakes that much higher?
Yes, you're absolutely right, and that's something that the creators of some of these Catholic tools have told me, is that they really want to provide an educational resource, point people toward the original sources. But not, sorry, this kind of goes back to a story I did last year, where Magisterium is creating this tool called Saint Chat, which is, kind of distills the words of saints and, kind of presents them in a way that allows people to ask questions to the saints. And they really stress that it's not in any way intended to provide, spiritual direction or replace a true prayerful, relationship with the saints. What these tools are trying to do is just, provide a really good kind of search experience, present the sources and the information to the person who ideally, double checks them and, especially on matters of faith, doesn't necessarily just take the AI's word for it. But I think it is worth noting that, for many of these Catholic AIs, it's definitely, I would say it's definitely better to ask these Catholic AIs questions about matters of faith than it is to ask, ChatGPT, for example, because, it all comes down to the data that these AIs are trained on, because many of the Catholic ones are trained on explicitly Catholic sources and have guardrails in place to make sure that they don't, give any information to users that directly contradicts anything within the faith. Whereas something like ChatGPT is created by a large secular company. It's probably trained mostly on movie and TV scripts, and that doesn't necessarily provide, a great basis for giving answers about the most important things in life, namely matters of faith.
Yeah, Jonah, well, in the short time we still have with you, I wanted to talk about your most recent piece, which is No AI Doesn't Have a Soul, the Catholic Understanding of His Role in Human Society. And your interview with a professor had some pretty interesting things to say.
Yes, so this was an interview with Dr. Michael Agros, who is a noted Catholic philosopher and a professor at Thomas Aquinas College, which its main campus is in California. And he has a really interesting podcast series out that is now available for anyone to watch for free on YouTube. And excuse me, and Dr. Agros basically takes 10 hours to tell us that AI does not have a soul. And I say that in the sense that he is extremely, extremely thorough with, defining terms and showing his work and making sure that, it's a very credible answer to this question. And you may wonder, well, why should I care? Why is this question so important? But it's important, but partly because creators of AI have really pushed this idea that, AI has consciousness. It's a person. But from a Catholic perspective, that has extremely, extremely far-reaching consequences if that were true. If AI were truly a person, we should talk about baptizing them. We should give them rights, this kind of thing. And so
a lot of things to consider.
Right. It's an important question. So it's a very interesting series that people can watch for free if they're interested.
Excellent. And you can find that at ncregister.com. Well, Jonah, thank you so much, as always, for your work.
Thanks so much.
Well, that's it for Register Radio for this week. Remember, for more news, analysis, and commentary, check out the National Catholic Register online at ncregister.com. Thanks for joining us here on Register Radio. Until next week, on behalf of our producer, Michael McCall, and Shannon Mullen, I'm Matthew Bunson. Please take care, and God bless.